So Julian, David, how would you sort of assess the last few years? Obviously the club was relegated from a championship, the first two attempts missed out on the playoffs, and the season being near the bottom end. Would it be too simplistic, maybe unfair to look at the league positions and say the club's going in the wrong direction instead of the right direction?
Yeah, possibly. I think my first 2 years here, which would be your first 2 years, I think we had a real opportunity to be in the playoffs on both occasions. So the club, in essence, having the ability to slightly overachieve with what it has and not worrying about that too much, but bringing something together. And we almost did it with Critch on final game of the season, Reading away, when we're 1-0 up and you're thinking we're in the playoffs. And we lose 3-1 and we're out of the playoffs. So I think in both situations we had a real opportunity to be in the playoffs. And we all thought the same this summer, that we're coming into the start of a season with the work that had been done on the football side of it. It's been disappointing. There's no question. We've all got to accept it's been disappointing. But it's not all bad. And I think people have to appreciate there's a lot of good stuff going on at the club. There's a lot of good stuff going on with the training ground work, and it's not beyond the wit of man to get into a run of games where we can play consecutive wins and see how we feel about the season by the end of the season. And then we've got to learn from the 3 seasons that we've had here and make sure we have a really good go at it the year after.
Yeah, David, obviously it was a big summer, a lot of money was invested. Is it too soon to say that money invested was a wasted chance with how performance have gone this year? Could we still see some of the signings? Obviously look at Dale Taylor who's been injured, Fraser Horsfall's had his injuries, George Honeyman, etc. Is it too soon to sort of throw those signs away and think there's not long-term foundations there?
Yeah, I think so. I think if we take ourselves back to the summer, like I said, I think everybody was really positive about the summer, and we wanted to make a bit more of an investment to try and get us to a point where we're competing higher up the division. There's been some incredibly strong teams in this league over the past couple of seasons. So, like I said, I think I don't want to kind of lose sight of where we were in the summer, and I think the overall feeling and the money that was invested and the transfer fee that was invested. Obviously, Dale Taylor was a considerable one for the football club, but I think as kind of you were just alluding to in your question, I think ultimately you could have gone on with another probably 10 names of lads that have been injured, and I think ultimately when we've been able to put close to our strongest 11 on the pitch and with a solid kind of bench behind it, I think over the course of December we saw probably a fair reflection of kind of where we would be. I think the fact that we've not been able to kind of put partnerships together all over the pitch has ultimately kind of put a hell of a lot of speed bumps in our season. And like I say, how many times Ashley Fletcher's played with Al Taylor, or Alvin Morgan's played with George Honeyman, and Ollie Casey's played with Fraser Horsfall. I think kind of there's probably not many times that those lads have all played together and been able to kind of form partnerships over the pitch to bring us some success, which has obviously been the frustration of everybody really.
With Ian Everett now in, who's got obviously completely different ideas to Steve Bruce, is another big summer going to be needed to sort of give him the backing he deserves and thinks he needs?
I don't think necessarily big summer in that sense. Like I say, I think not all managers are massively different from each other. They all enjoy having good players to work with and want good players around them. That's like I say, I don't know any manager that doesn't enjoy having decent players to work with. What I would say is that every manager and head coach, probably throughout Simon's duration, has always been backed. And like I say, come the summer, that I'm sure Ian will be exactly the same. He'll be back to put a team together that we can kind of look to move forward from. But I think in terms of big summer and drastic change, I don't think so. Because like I say, I think when the lads have all played together in the kind of short periods that they have done, we've kind of seen shoots of probably where we could get to, like I say, noticeably probably that December month where we probably only had one injury. I think we probably showed our true colours, I'd like to think.
You touched on every manager being back, but Steve Bruce was back more than most. Was that a gamble that just didn't pay off?
Well, I think in hindsight, obviously as we sit today, obviously, but like I say, I think there's a lot of factors that kind of go into that, Amos. I don't think it's as kind of there's such a straight line as kind of bring players in and put them on the pitch. Like I say, the injuries that we've had, I think it's something that's in the game completely. Like I say, I read something yesterday where Thomas Frank, I think, was missing something like 5.8 players per game, and in effect it's cost him his job, and probably he sat there thinking that it probably wasn't a true reflection of himself. So like I say, I don't think it's a thing of it being a straight line in that sense. I think there's quite a few factors involved in it that like I say, has made our season kind of turn out how it has done.
Julian obviously mentioned Steve Bruce before him, Neil Critchley, who played a certain way. Steve Bruce had his own ideas, and Ian Everts also got his own ideas. Does the club have its own identity, a way that you want to go, or are you just based on how managers and you will sway one way to the other?
Well, I think it's clear that there's been a shift in the way we've gone about it between Critch, Steve, and now Ian. I think everyone talks about clubs having an identity. Everyone wants to have this identity, but in reality it's very hard to achieve on a consistent basis because the nature of the way squads churn, the way managers get headhunted, get moved on. I couldn't sit here and put my finger on, have we got a club DNA as people talk about? Maybe it's incumbent upon Ian to think about that and maybe create one for us. But I still think it's quite a difficult thing. As David's just said, it's about good players working in a system that suits those players. That can shift and change. And actually, we should be able to shift and change. Because modern players are good enough, right? They're good enough to adapt to circumstance. And they should be, because they're well coached and they've all been educated through academies mostly now, and there are hardly any that haven't been through academies. So their football education has been a strong one, and that's playing in multiple systems. So I don't think there is one. I think it's more about, I kind of alluded to earlier, about putting a team on the field that with a certain energy and style that engages the fans and gets the fans engaged, and then that energy that gets created in the stadium is the Blackpool thing. That I've been here before with other clubs where I've literally sat out here and gone, wow, we haven't even kicked off yet and the place is rocking. You want to get into that feeling that the fans feel that engaged in what the football is producing. So, and I think that can be done in multiple ways. It doesn't have to be a singular way of producing a football team.
Just want to ask, obviously, I know you believe obviously we can go on a run, and the squad is good enough to go on a run, but at the moment they find themselves towards the bottom end. Are you prepared for that worst case scenario that if the club are hit with an unexpected relegation? Is everything in line? Is contingency plans in place?
Well, there are things that we will have to do, so we're not naive. But we don't spend every day being preoccupied about what that looks like, but we've got an awareness of what will need to happen. So yeah, it's not a solution, it's not a result that we want, but we're not naive to think that it's impossible to happen.
Just looking to the future, David, obviously there's quite a few players out of contract, quite a few key players. How soon can you sort of knuckle down and get on with them and securing the best players are still in Tangerine next season?
Yeah, well, to be fair, a few of them have got option years, so in effect we're protected contractually with them anyway. So, and like I said, look, I'm based at the training ground every day. I see the players every day. I talk to their agents most weeks. So we're always in kind of continual dialogue about what the future holds for us all. Like I say, Ashley Fletcher's been in the press recently saying that we've been talking, and like I say, I think there's a little bit of this work to do on the pitch, I think first and foremost, but like I say, and as Julian's just touched on, I think you're constantly planning for all eventualities and all events. So like I say, it's not a thing that nobody does anything until the end of the season. We're all talking, and like I say, we're all kind of working together to try and solve them futures ultimately, and whether they're going to stay here or whether they're going to go and play somewhere else. But like I say, we're always in constant discussion about that and where their heads are at, where they're thinking, where we're at. So yeah, it's always open dialogue and, like I say, planning for everything really.
I know in January you needed some short-term fixes and players were brought in on loan to do exactly that. They've only played one game, the likes of Anderson and Walters, but are you looking longer term with like the loanees? And you know, I know we've seen in recent years Hayden Coulson came on loan, Jordan Rhodes came on loan, and then they've ended up being here permanent. Do you look at those players and think, you know, we can sort of, this January window is a long-term looking ahead window?
Look, January's a difficult window to kind of navigate through. Listen, you'll speak to, Ian will say that in his press, you'll speak to most managers and head coaches across the country, and they'll all say exactly the same thing. Like, in effect, sometimes we're all incumbent on people that are higher above, and when they're releasing players and everything else, and ultimately kind of if clubs choose to make changes with their loan players. So listen, if a loan player comes here and does quite well, like obviously there's always a thing where you'd like to bring them back because you know them. Obviously it's a tried and tested route, but January is a difficult market to kind of go through longer term. Obviously we signed Leighton Clarkson on a permanent deal, and obviously that was something that kind of was, that scenario was different come the turn of the year, and obviously towards the end of the window it changed. We thought it was a really good opportunity for us to take a player permanently that will help us into next season, and obviously help Ian develop his squad. And we didn't hesitate to kind of take it. So look, January's difficult, but obviously if there's always an opportunity to do something for the longer term, I think as we've showed, we'll always do it, and Simon's always prepared to back that as well by kind of putting his money in for us to be able to secure those players. So like I say, January's difficult, but we'll always take an opportunity to kind of do something more longer term.
Yeah, you said it's difficult, probably made more difficult by you was forced to react by injuries, so that would make the challenge even harder. That 1 week you could look at the picture and think we're fine, and then you look at the picture and think for the next month we're out, people in this position.
Yeah, look, it goes back to planning, and like I say, like you can never, listen, you can, football's a crazy game, do you know what I mean? Like you can never rule out somebody coming for a player permanently, you can't rule out injury, you can't rule out Danny Imray getting recalled by Crystal Palace. So in effect you have to be adaptable, and like I say, I think if you kind of do your homework and everything else, when, like I say, did we think we'd bring a couple of midfield players in by the end of the window? We probably didn't think we'd bring 3, but obviously when Joel and George come off against Stockport, obviously then you have to react accordingly and quickly and ultimately try and make good decisions under a little bit of pressure. And like I said, we're really pleased with the 3 that we were able to kind of bring in.
I know you can't say much about Simon's personal matter in Hong Kong, but can you provide that reassurance that his business is normal here and that everything will go on as if nothing was happening?
Yeah, since the day it was announced, the club's had the business as usual message and mentality, and that will remain the same.
Just on, obviously it's coming up to 3 years you've been here now, do you still have that sort of hunger and belief to obviously make sure this club's going in the right direction, leave it in a better place than you found it?
100%, yeah.
What does that look like in the, well, both the short term and long term? Where do you see yourself? Where can this club be in the next 3 years?
I think I said this when I came here, that the club is that club that can overachieve a little bit with what it is and what it's got, but it should be, in my opinion, a championship club, and should be a championship club on a consistent basis. So if we progress as we hope we do, you know, in a year or two we'll be a championship club and fighting for something different, really.
And just finally for you, David, as well, obviously you'll have a blueprint of where you see the club going, of how you want to build the squad. This has probably been a blip this season, not how you would have hoped, but do you still think you're on course for what you personally see the club being and the squad being?
Yeah, I think so. Like I say, I think the squad's developed. Like I say, I think this is arguably the strongest squad that we've probably had, certainly since I've been here. It's kind of well equipped. Like I say, the circumstances that's probably derailed that this season a little bit, and as you say, it is probably a blip in that sense. But like I say, I think look, there's a hell of a lot going on around the club in terms of like investment in the stadium, in the training ground, in the players, in the transfer fees. So like I say, I think look, we all want it to be a championship club, and we all want to be at the top end of League One. And like I say, I think with Ian and the start that he's made and his affinity to the club, look, I genuinely think there's reason to be positive. And like I say, optimistic about the future.